He said, with all due respect to Super Bowl championships, trophies, and rings, this is why God really gave us this great game and the San Francisco 49ers to play it, to show what we are capable of achieving together, not despite our differences, but precisely because of those differences, because of what each of us uniquely brings to the effort. It was out of this sentiment and commitment that he asked me, Rodney Knox, and John McVay, a man who, in my judgment, is among the 2 or 3 greatest football CEOs and general managers in the history of the NFL, to design a minority coaches internship program that eventually could be implemented throughout the National Football League. It is not at all coincidental that many of the minority assistant coaches now employed in the National Football League came through the minority coaches internship program, and that most of the minorities who became head coaches came to their positions directly or indirectly by way of Bill Walsh, Denny Green, Ray Rhodes, Tony Dungy, and Marvin Lewis, who was among the 49ers' first interns. There were most certainly some in the National Football League who did not need a minority coaches internship program. Principal among them, Bill's good friend, Mr. Al Davis, who hired the first Latino head coach and the first African-American head coach of the modern era. But the league needed such a program, and Bill recognized that. But perhaps Bill's greatest impact was upon the lives of NFL players, both within the 49ers organization and beyond. In 1986, when in excess of 70% of NFL players had not completed their college degrees, and over 90% of players, according to one survey, had no post-football occupational plans or preparation, Bill asked me to develop a battery of player support programs that ultimately were also adopted by the entire league. The college reentry program, the post-career occupational preparation and internship program, the financial counseling program, and the family and personal counseling program are all the result of the vision and commitment of Bill Walsh to the players in this great game. At a personal level, Bill's approach and philosophy was keenly felt by his players. And in innumerable conversations that I had with him over the years, the reasons at the very foundation of his relationship with his players became abundantly clear. He cared for and loved them deeply. He had a superlative social psychological understanding of every man on his roster. And he had an absolutely extraordinary capacity to teach and manage men. Over my years in the locker room while he was head coach, there was not a player who did not believe emphatically that if Bill had 2 days to prepare for any team in the league, the man that they called the gray fox behind his back would give them the edge they needed to win the game. Bill knew his players as athletes and as men, and he never tired of assessing and evaluating and reevaluating them as they moved through their careers. For instance, of Joe Montana, he once told me he is the single most competitive man I've ever met. I never even use his name in meetings when I'm putting in plays. I just say the quarterback does this or does that because I know that Joe is going to do whatever it takes to get it done and give us a chance to win the game. Of Randy Cross, he said, somewhere deep down inside of Randy Cross is a guy with about 3 days of stubble on his face who goes to work wearing a hard hat and carrying a lunch bucket every day, sick or healthy, and who you would find at a bar with an entryway off of an alley on Friday nights. This is the guy that shows up to practice every day and to games on Sunday, and that's why I love him as a player. Of Dwight Clark, he said, this is a man who through sheer dint of courage, toughness, resolve, and effort willed himself to be a great receiver. Of Ronnie Lott, he once told me almost with an air of pride, you know why Ronnie and I knock heads so hard sometimes? Because we're so much alike. He is a perfectionist. He has very high standards and the highest expectations of everyone, especially himself, and he is absolutely unwilling to compromise on those standards and expectations. He couldn't be more like me if he was my own son, and that's what gets under my skin. We have a bad practice or we'll lose a game. I'm in a team meeting trying to pull things back together. I look at Ronnie and I know exactly what he's thinking. And then he goes and says it. And I asked him about Jerry Rice. He paused and looked down for the longest moment before he finally looked back up and smiled. He said, one day, God just decided to create a wide receiver and to give him the mental toughness and the work ethic to make it all happen. And then there's Mr. Eddie DeBartolo Jr., who Bill regarded as the second most competitive man he had ever met, the greatest owner of any professional franchise of his era, the first NFL owner to win 5 Super Bowls, and a man who deserves to be, who already should be, and who one day will be in the Hall of Fame at Canton, Ohio. Of Mr. D, Bill once told me his basic position is, I'm going to give you everything you need and most of what you ask for, but you better win. And when we lose 1 or 2 or 3 games, depending on the situation, he'll come in and fire everybody, only to hire everybody back the next morning with bonuses and the warning, but you better win. Bill used to tell me that he kind of envied some guys on the other side of the bay whose kind old owner used to just whisper in their ear softly, win, baby, win. Bill even had an assessment of me when he was asked by a writer doing a story for the December 2002 San Francisco magazine, in your experience, how would you characterize Dr. Edwards? He said, he's like a high-powered sports car. It can be a heck of a ride and a lot of fun, but you better know how to handle it. Bill never failed to elicit from his players and staff that optimal mix of respect, affection, and fear. Not so much fear in a negative sense, but fear of having to face him, of disappointing him by not doing their jobs. In one of my last conversations with him, Bill said that more than anything else, he wanted to be remembered as a man who cared